or three-headed frogs, or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes. Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host,
Rebecca Wood, who has the hiccups.
Okay, which is, great for radio. And we
Totally.
together are going to be bringing you for the next hour a show called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and family and pets and the people you see on the street and the fish in the ocean and just like everybody everywhere, because we're all crumpled up together into this one sort of beautiful wad of a planet called planet Earth. And that's what we'd like to talk about here on this show just for the next hour or so. And we got a great show lined up for you today. We have an interview with Carly Allen, who is from TARTA, Toledo Area Regional Transit Authority. And we're going to talk to Carly about a number of things, including all these billions of dollars coming down from Washington that are supposed to help jazz up public transportation all over the world. And then our advertisers and patrons. And after we hear from our wonderful advertisers and patrons, then Rebecca is going to give us a report on
Lithium.
Yes, that vital element, so important to the future, to the green future, which is what we're working towards every day on this show. Then we've got some ecological news and information, and hopefully at some point we're going to hear from you. And there's several ways you can get a hold of us. One is to call at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. And another way is to text us at 419-973-5841. That's 419-973-5841. Just wanted to chat a little bit before we go to our interview. And one thing I wanted to talk about was, I have to start this show out with an apology to Denmark.
Oh, what did we do to Denmark?
Well, last week we reported on a story that some Danish citizens were suing Denmark over lack of progress on global warming. And it was a story. I saw it on Facebook. I took some notes as I read it and then, just reported it on the show last week. But then I was unable to find that story again, and I was unable to find any references to it anywhere. And so now I'm thinking it wasn't real. Because one of the things I did find out is that Denmark actually in 2019 did pass federal law setting hard CO2 limits. In fact, they're going to reduce their CO2 emissions by 75% by 2030. It's one of the hardest deadlines with the most ambitious CO2 reductions in the world. And so here I am casting aspersions on Denmark by reporting on this story. It's just one of those hard lessons, that you can't just take a few notes on something you saw on Facebook and then report it, because it's likely very wrong. So I'm sorry to the government of Denmark, the Danish people, and to just everybody over there who are doing such a much better job than we are here in the U.S. in dealing with climate change. And one thing about that, I like to when I'm walking my dog, especially on Sunday mornings, I like to look for some inspiration for the show, for this little, before we go to the interview, I like to just chat for 15 minutes or so. And of course, you can join us in this chatting time or any time during the show at buildings that is so ubiquitous around here, and it's a natural gas hub. It's a natural gas that's where the gas line comes in, and I just want to play for a second here. I recorded this. This is the sound that you hear if you're standing next to that house. Oh, wait, here we go.
That was the sound.
There we go. Why isn't this playing?
It made a sound.
Oh, it isn't playing because this is a free sound recorder. There it is. Yeah, there we go. So that's the noise that you hear, and that's the sound of natural gas going through the pipes and going out to the houses and keeping us all warm. But of course, that's also the sound that's essentially destroying the planet, because all that natural gas that's going through those pipes is getting burned up, turned into CO2 and H2O, and off into the air to heat the planet. So one of the things in the Build Back Better is money for people to switch their houses over from natural gas to geothermal heating, which we've talked about that before. And so, hopefully, if you're presented with that opportunity, go for it, because taking the heat for the house and the coolness for the house out of the ground instead of burning fossil fuels to get that energy, that's the wave of the future. That's essential for a green future. So, just a little, as I'm walking along and I hear that, I can't help, as an ecologist, as an environmentalist, I can't help but think, okay, that's the sound of the planet being turned into an uninhabitable place. So, yeah. But there's lots we can do to change things. And, as long as we all do them, then we will actually survive this. I mean, it's really, really critical. It's really, really the last minute, folks. But we're still in that last minute. The last minute is not over. A lot of people are trying to tell us, it's too late. There's just been too much CO2 put in the air. Don't even bother trying, because, just eat, drink, and be merry. And that's the wrong attitude. So it's kind of like with COVID, some people who both refuse to get the vaccine and won't wear masks or social distance. It's like, those are the people that are dying. Unfortunately,
yeah. What is this? There's this Omicron thing. It might be more breakthrough cases. They're worried.
Yeah, they're saying that this new variant evades the vaccines. But if we were all to continue to do the sensible things, like wear the masks indoors and behave as if we're biological organisms that are susceptible to things like viruses, instead of behaving like we're just some sort of godlike creatures that things like viruses and bacteria can't affect, because we're just
because we're all the Ubermensch now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that as long as we take sensible precautions, we can keep the death counts low, and we can survive this, folks. But you have to accept science, and accepting science is essential for a green future. I mean, we all have to know some science. I'm sorry, but
that's the thing. I think this is sort of the ultimate ableism, not only because it's like, oh, well, some, people with medical conditions are meant to die, whatever, but also, like, it's this idea that if you look okay, you're bulletproof. Well, after a while, you learn you're not in life. Some people sooner than later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some
of us can't afford those illusions.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think we're just about to the time where we can go to our interview, because we've said it before. We've talked about in the show how a robust public transit system is definitely part of the green future. And
do you think you're going to do that thing where they do the train to Columbus, the high-speed train line to Columbus or something?
We, cool. We didn't talk about that, but yeah, that may
not be her ballywhack, but it would be cool.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Josh. Let's hear our interview with Carly Allen. Carly, thanks so much for agreeing to be interviewed this afternoon. Let's start with your name and your position.
So my name is Carly Allen, and I am the president business agent of Amalgamated Transit Union Local 697. So to say it briefly, we call ourselves ATU, and I represent the TARTA and TARPS drivers and mechanics.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us on For a Green Future. So this past November, TARTA got a big boost when the referendum on the ballot passed. Could you remind us what that vote was about?
Sure. So issue 12 successfully sought to add Lucas County as a member community of TARTA. So repeal the property tax millages in the current TARTA service area. Replace those millages with a 0.5% sales tax for all of Lucas County and Ross. So that's like a big mouthful. The ballot language also included some transit-related infrastructure money for municipalities currently in the TARTA service area. So that's really what it did in a technical way. The easy way is to say we're going countywide. So we expanded our transit system and brought it to a funding mechanism that is in line with peer agencies across the state.
Okay, well, congratulations on its passage. So what plans does TARTA have for the future now that this has gone through?
So that's a really great question. Throughout the campaign, there weren't a lot of huge campaign promises made, although the agency did commit to reintroduce Sunday and holiday service during the first half of 2022. And I think that in the second half of 2022, there will be some introduction to TARTA in areas where we haven't served. But as this whole levy thing was going on, there was a project that is still going on today called TARTA Next, and it has a website, tartanext.com, but it's operational analysis of our system. And so the big dance is going to happen at the end of 22 when that analysis, right, what the agency is going to do, and a lot of that is being done by communicating with people, not just bosses and offices, but people who use the system or would like to use the system. So it's exciting.
Okay, so some more routes, some additional changes. Sounds pretty good. Now, the infrastructure bill that just got passed at the national level, just signed into law there by President Biden, supposedly has quite a bit of money earmarked for mass transit. Can we hope to see some benefits for TARTA from this money?
That is going to dramatically increase TARTA's federal funding. And so with that money, though, typically federal money is what you call capital money. So you can really, that doesn't go into routes or who's driving the bus. It kind of goes into the equipment and infrastructure of the system. There was, so I can honestly say I would anticipate major upgrades to the fleet, with an emphasis on a transition to the zero emission coaches. So there'll be money to buy those coaches, but then to also put the infrastructure that the agency would need in there. There's money for that. There is money earmarked for training and apprenticeship programs so that workers aren't left behind. So a lot of times when you talk about a just transition or new technology, as a worker, it can scare you, right? Because you don't know where you're going to fit in with this. This legislation, I think, did a nice job of addressing that. So I'm excited so that diesel mechanics don't have to be afraid when an electric bus comes in of what's going to happen to them, because we're going to teach them how to work on the bus. And I think that is kind of part of the best news of the whole thing. I guess my union spot makes me think that way. That's great, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of our points on For a Green Future is that the green future is a prosperous future. You know, it doesn't mean that we have to, make less money. It means we're all going to be better off in the long run. So, and just when you say zero emission buses, you mean battery powered electric buses?
That's the goal, is zero and low emission buses. But I would look for the battery powered, the electric buses. That's kind of the wave of what's happening in the industry. And even as drivers, to operate that equipment, we're going to have to do a little work, because there's like regenerative braking and all kinds of nerdy bus driver things that I'm going to not go too far into. But I mean, it's really going to be a cool time as long as we embrace our role in tomorrow and not be afraid of it.
All right, cool. And when a region has effective mass transit, it doesn't just help the people riding the buses, does it? I mean, it boosts the entire regional economy, doesn't it?
You are spot on with that. So 2018, Bowling Green State University did a study about the agency, and on their numbers, TARTA's return on investment is 2.95. So if you take the projected $32 million from the sales tax along with $51 million from the infrastructure bill and amplify that by 2.95, I mean, we're talking just shy of $250 million in economic returns. So that's not small potatoes. And I think that's a under talked about piece about really the benefit, even if you're not on the bus exactly, is the economic impacts. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So you're the head of the bus drivers union. I guess that means you've been driving bus for a while then.
I have. I got my CDL when I was a student at University of Toledo because it was the best paying job on campus. And some things changed in my world, and I wound up having the CDL still and applying for a job at TARTA. And it's turned out to be just really a cool place to be. I've been with TARTA since 2006. But in addition to my colleagues, the passengers are great, meeting new people all day and being out and about. Like, I don't know if I would want to drive by myself all day, but driving and talking and getting used to your regulars and seeing what's going on in their lives, you can't beat that.
So that's what you enjoy the most about driving buses?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, is the human factor.
All right, so now comes the tough question. Our co-host, Rebecca Wood, she lives in the city in Toledo and depends on TARTA. She doesn't have a car. And she's talked on the show before about people who have limited mobility like herself, so she can't stand for long periods of time. So she's got to have benches to sit on to wait for the bus. And it seems to her that bus routes are losing benches, and so she's having trouble riding. She's actually had to not go on some routes because there's no usable benches. So will some of this money help with some of that? So what do you say to people like Rebecca?
Oh, I love people like Rebecca because workers have a voice, but our customers have a louder voice. And I would encourage her to look at some of our grassroots groups that are out there. There's a group called Cater, who I've had the pleasure of working with, and they're community advocates for transportation rights. But I would say advocacy and accountability. So we just delivered this victory to the agency, and let's do right with it. So currently there's an advertising company that's in charge of the benches, and I've got my own different thoughts on those because they seem to kind of have an anti-homeless design and different things. But another hard step for me. I'll just get my little digs in there. But with this money, there's no reason why TARTA would be limited with installing bus shelters with adequate seating for customers. Certainly with that capital money from the federal government, I'm sure they could find a way there. Also, the small infrastructure piece of issue 12, municipalities themselves, I think, could take on some of that. So just keep beating the drum, write letters to the board, get with other groups that are interested in transit, especially rider rights. That's going to be how you affect change, because we need to make every aspect of the system more user friendly, not just the bus stops with seating, but we need increased frequency. We need to update the fleet. We need to make sure that coaches have, cabin doors for drivers and passenger amenities like charging stations and Wi-Fi. There's so much that we can do with our system, and we now have the means to do it. So let's make sure they come through for us.
All right. So what's the single biggest improvement that you're looking forward to in TARTA in the coming months?
I know this one seems small, but to me, bringing back Sundays and holidays means something for workers in our community. I'm not just saying transit workers. I mean people that work non-traditional service type jobs that rely on our service, bringing that back. And I'm really excited to see at the end of 22 what the TARTA Next analysis has to say. So it's going to be a good time. I wish I had a sexier answer, but this is really where we're at, and I'm just ready to see what tomorrow holds.
Well, Sunday and holidays is a big thing, actually. I mean, people can get to church or go shopping. Yeah, so that's a good answer. So, all right, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything we haven't covered yet?
So, in our surrounding area, especially outside of city centers, there are people who are isolated, and mass transit is a way to get people connected to other people, bring them back into the world, give them independence. It shows that your community cares. There is the economic benefit. So no matter what your inclinations are politically, a good argument can be made for the importance of transit in a community, whether it's large or small.
And actually, I was involved when Perrysburg lost its mass transit for a while there, dropped out of TARTA, and there wasn't any replacement. And just what you're describing happened. A lot of people, especially people who are mobility impaired or blind, literally became prisoners in their own homes.
Yep. And it's really crappy. So even the dial-a-ride service that we had there, we had some express runs. We took people into ball games into town. We had the Rossford Call Ride that would take people to work out in Perrysburg, right? It ran through Rossford into Perrysburg. And then the folks, as a driver, there are people on the weekends that you would drive the Perrysburg Call Ride, and you knew that this person was going to the store this day or going to get their hair set. A lot of the assisted living areas, those residents used us. We were what kept them going. So I'm thankful that they have something, but I do wish someday for there to be life outside of Perrysburg, for there to be, again, it's connectivity. Regional connectivity is so critical.
All right, here. Maybe someday you can even connect down here to Bowling Green. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, that's one of my dreams. Maybe I'm California dreaming, but it's one of my dreams. So it's not necessarily an addition, but a reiteration of, if you are listening to this and you care at all about the future of what public transportation is going to be like in the Lucas County area, don't be afraid to dream big. Get on the TARTA Next website, put your email in so you can start on the next round of customer or consumer feedback or public feedback. Make your voices there. I would love to see us do this right, make the system that people want, and maybe in 5 years talk about being a really regional transit that went places beyond Lucas County. I mean, let's not stop moving forward with this.
Right. Okay. And so that website, one more time, TARTA Next?
Next.com, correct.
Okay. So there we go. That's our interview with Carly Allen. And Rebecca, I saw some facial expressions there as the interview was playing. Did you want to comment on what was said there?
So much. I just, I can't even address all of this. It's okay. It's not, people need to go get their hair done and go to church. No. You try applying for any kind of service job saying, well, sorry, I can't work weekends and I can't work evenings and weekends.
Mm-hmm.
No, people become homeless, lose their jobs, become homeless, and die every time the bus service is cut back. Or they have to pay for lifts, which they really can't afford out of their salary, so they're kind of paying to work that day as a way to keep the rest of their job. Mm-hmm. Or, I know people who have cars, but it's a huge burden on them because they have students in their household. They have, people who don't have it. They're a one-car family, and it's this huge burden on them that they have to drive them everywhere.
Right. Okay, well, so hopefully the importance of this is coming home, and at least there's going to be some money. Let's hope that restarting weekend and holiday routes is a big thing then.
Basically, yeah. I mean, we tell poor people, oh, you need to, work your way, but you need to get back into society and get a job and everything and, be productive. But really the message that our transit system says is once you're below a certain level, just stay down, you're better off.
Well, I'm looking forward to an enhanced TARTA. And I think what a lot of people in this region don't know, because they have never experienced it in their lives, is a really good public transit system adds so much to everybody's life. I mean, people can sit there and do stuff on their phones, if you can get where you need to go without having to have your car and worry about parking. And it's just
so many millennials, for example, are just barely clinging to the underside of the middle class, or trying to clamber back into it up to their parent status, and having a car and having to maintain it is a huge burden for them.
Yeah,
it's a big part of why they're not able to do that.
Right, it's like $10,000 a year to have a car once you add all the expenses, insurance and gas and oil changes, and so all right. Well, I Well, that was our interview with Carly, and if you have any comments on that or anything else for the next half hour or so here, you can give us a call at 877-909-1007. Okay, and now it's time to hear from our wonderful sponsors and patrons. For Green Futures brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's several ways to get a hold of them. The phone number is 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. They also have a great website, which is simply wcparks.org. And keep using that WC Parks thing. You can go to any app store and download their app, the WC Parks app, that has their schedule and has some nice pictures and announcements of what they're doing. And, of course, they're on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the Wood County Park District. For Green Futures also brought to you by our wonderful patrons who I don't thank enough, and I can't thank enough for them. They've gone to patreon.com, Patreon, signed up for a monthly, so like once every 4 weeks, a little donation comes out of their checking account, comes over to us. It's painful for them, but it's joyful for us, and that's what lets us keep the show going. So please consider becoming a patron of For Green Future. And that's, as I said, I can't thank them enough. Well, there's our patrons and advertisers. So, Rebecca, now it's time. Let's talk lithium. And I guess we're not talking about the mood-altering drug at this point, right?
Well, there's a little bit on that, too.
Oh,
It has a lot of uses.
All right. Let's hear about lithium.
Lithium, all right. Yeah, lithium is an element. Its symbol is capital L, small I, and with a 3 because it's atomic number. Is that right? Atomic number?
Yeah. It's atomic number 3. Number of protons in the nucleus.
I get confused with the weight.
Yeah,
which is totally different. It's usually in the point blah 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 something.
Yeah, the weight is if you add the neutrons to the protons, then you get the weight.
All right, there we go. So the atomic number means it has 3 protons. I used to know this stuff at junior high school, but not no more. So I don't.
Well, they're hard to count. They're really tiny.
Yeah,
you can't really,
I hate that. So anyway, lithium is a weird little metal. It's a soft alkali metal, being the opposite of base. So it's like bleach. Bleach is another alkali thing.
That is base. It's the opposite of acidic.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And it's the lightest metal and the lightest solid element. It looks sort of silvery white, apparently. It's highly reactive and flammable. You got to store it either in a vacuum or purified kerosene or mineral oil. If you want to melt lithium, you got to get it really, really hot. It melts at 356.90 Fahrenheit. If you want to vaporize it or something, you're really talking crazy high temperatures. Lithium has primordial occurrence, which is a term. It's not just, a word that sounds fancy like liberal artsy types like me think. Primordial means a thing has existed in its current form since before the Earth was formed. Mm-hmm. So lithium was out there in the interstellar medium, which eventually formed the solar systems, I guess.
Wow.
From which they were formed. Mm-hmm. It's paramagnetic, which means it's weakly attracted by an external application of a magnetic field.
Okay.
So I just sort of aimed for the things that I had a chance of understanding. There was a lot of stuff that I would have had to study a lot more to figure out.
Right.
Actually comprehend. I guess lithium is kind of everywhere. It's in a lot of things. It's in seawater. It's lithium is from the Greek lithos, I believe, which means rock.
Okay.
So it's in most rocks. It's used as medication for mostly manic episodes, also severe depression, schizophrenia, and impulse control disorders. Like with the form of ACD, where where you pull your hair out a lot or something, that kind of thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I kind of looked it up, and I wanted to see if there was some connection with Himalayan rock salt, because lithium is a salt. mostly.
Right.
But it's not been proven. I'm guessing, the whole thing about Himalayan rock salt is that if you have one sort of that's applied to heat in your house, it's supposed to calm you down or something. There's caves. If you go in a lithium rock salt, Himalayan rock salt cave, is supposed to help you.
The lamps, interesting. Interesting theory.
It has not been demonstrated in the laboratory or anything. It kind of makes intuitive sense though, because I'm guessing the thing with lithium is that and with Himalayan salt is that people noticed that when you're surrounded by rock and maybe you're getting some lithium, along with all the other salts and stuff.
Yeah, interesting theory.
So really don't know though. Industrially, it's made with it's used for heat-resistant glass and ceramics, grease lubricants, flux additives for iron, steel, and aluminum, and lithium-ion batteries, which I suspect is why Joe likes it.
Yes. Right. It's the lithium-ion batteries are largely responsible for all these great, electric cars and all this advances we're making in powering ourselves electrically.
There you go. Oh, and I wrote down some medication stuff at the bottom of the page. It can be a little hard on kidneys and or fetuses, and the medication comes in citrate and carbonate forms, so you can have lithium citrate or lithium carbonate, I guess. The mining of it, I found an article on November 27th, 2011, a few days ago. Protesters have blocked roads in Serbia over plans to extract lithium area near Loznica. I think there's been some trouble other places, Peru, Bolivia. Some risks that it has, according to Wired 2018, and Friends of the Earth don't like it very much. It uses a lot of water. So it takes water away from agriculture in some areas and dries up whole ponds. There are toxic chemicals that can leak out of evaporation pools. There's apparently two kinds. There's two kinds of cobalt or of mining for lithium. There's either rock extraction or brine extraction, and both require some kind of chemicals. With a brine extraction, you just kind of leave it in pools for long periods of time, and I think months, and eventually it separates into different chemicals and you can use them.
Settles out, right?
Yeah. So it also leaves behind discarded salt heaps and salt canals, and they're looking into possible generation from seawater, might be a little cleaner. And also they're thinking that for lithium batteries, ultimately cobalt and nickel might be more of a problem. They might create more of a bottleneck. We're worried about lithium right now, but this other stuff might be worse. Mm-hmm. So, there are things we got to stay on top of. This is the thing about private corporations. They tend to do stuff that makes the money in the short term. You got to keep your eye on them,
Right. Yeah, we can't let them mess up the future while trying to, use the excuse of the lithium batteries. But, on the other hand, to completely say, I've heard people make this argument that we should not be mining lithium at all. At this point, we're kind of a crisis. We need to get, as we've talked about Mark Jacobson, Dr. Mark Jacobson, who's told us how we need to completely power our society electrically. And at this point, lithium batteries seem key to that. Now, there are other potentially much more benign environmentally sorts of batteries. We've reported at the University of Australia, they came up with an aluminum carbon battery, which is supposedly better than lithium batteries. And aluminum carbon, there's carbon's very readily available, but aluminum is also much more easily extracted than lithium. So, if there's something better, we should switch to that as soon as we possibly can. But to just stop the transition to electrical at this point is I don't think we can afford to do that.
And there are better and worse ways to do it, apparently. So we have to make sure the corporations are doing it the best possible way, for starters.
Right, because they love to use the excuse of an emergency to just toss all the regulations out the window. But then that eventually does come back to get you, to bite you. So,
Yeepers.
All right, well, thanks so much for that report on the vital element, lithium. So, okay, now, let's see. Let's go on to some ecological news. And Of course, there's still lots of time for a call or a text at calling at 877-909-1007. Oh, go ahead.
What have you heard about this thing about Maumee dumping sewage into the Maumee River upstream of us? That seems bad.
I haven't heard about that yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they just recently, a couple weeks ago, discovered that for, I think, decades, the city of Maumee has been dumping just raw sewage into the Maumee River.
Oh.
And letting it come at us and then drift out into Lake Erie.
Wow. Okay, well, good to know. All right, well, we'll definitely have to follow up on that story.
Yeah, I can't remember. They're trying to do something to prevent them from doing it again someday, and there's talk of, I don't know, people getting in trouble vaguely.
Are we talking about a storm overflow? Because that's a common way that places that have sewage treatment.
You know, that's the thing. Somebody call in and rescue me here, because I don't have very many details. I forget what it was exactly, but they were doing something that's illegal, actually illegal.
Oh, okay. So 877-909-1007 if you know the story that Rebecca brought up, because I really want to know. But yeah, most commonly what happens is a system will have a combination storm and sewer, and so in storms the sewers overflow and then the raw sewage gets in.
Yep.
It's not usually just, routinely every day, just, let's put the raw sewage in. But maybe that's what Mommy's doing. I don't know. I'm not familiar with this story. Sorry.
We just put in a whole bunch of gigantic underground cisterns in Toledo. They had Joey Brown Park dug up for a long time, putting in this giant just for storm overflow specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And then there down by the river near the one bridge that goes under I-280.
Right.
There's another one right there, sort of in the armpit of the bridge too, on the east side.
Yeah, I mean, then storms, as we know, are getting more intense, and so storm overflow is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So.
It's just going to become business as usual unless we do something. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's do something. All right, and someplace where people were trying to do something was Minnesota, where they've been fighting the tar sands pipeline there, the Line 3 pipeline, and we've been following this story, since the very first protests, and that is a point I want to make, is that we tend to be way out ahead on all this stuff.
Yeah, we kind of do.
Yeah. And so Line 3, the protesting is, the actual physical blocking is pretty much done, because the pipeline is almost done. They're not, the protesters aren't there now trying to still physically block, as far as I know. But what's happening in Minnesota is that the protesters who were arrested all through the summer are now being prosecuted for felonies, because Minnesota, like Ohio, has passed laws that make protesting fossil fuel infrastructure a felony, not just which seems like a violation of our First Amendment rights.
I don't like fossil fuels. Am I going to jail now? I just protested.
Oh, maybe. All right.
Jeez.
If somebody turned you in, Rebecca, you might be in trouble.
Oh my God.
Well, actually, usually it's you have to be involved in physically blocking.
Oh, okay.
And these people, the almost 1,000 people in Minnesota who got arrested, they were literally from all walks of life, and a lot of them, actually, a huge percentage of them were senior citizens. And
wow,
there's pictures, if you look on the internet, of the news, they'll be 3 octogenarians sitting on lawn chairs with those little
you gotta watch out for old people. They don't have that much left to lose.
Right. And they're sitting there in lawn chairs with their hands locked together in tubes, to block the gate. And so that now is a felony in Minnesota. And they're literally, the articles in there are essentially the courts complaining, because there's hundreds and hundreds of people being charged with felonies, and so now it's quote unquote blocking the courts.
Oh,
so that's
so sad.
That's the problem.
Maybe they will have to not prosecute as many marijuana users. Oh well.
Yeah. Well, so hopefully there is a nationwide movement, and in fact we reported on that last week. I believe it's hashtag Drop the Charges. There's a nationwide movement to try to get people who are just exercising their constitutional right to assemble and speak freely, and get branded as felons for doing that. Those charges should be dropped, and so that's an important thing to report on, that because They want us to just forget about these people, but these are literally ordinary citizens, everyday people who are looking at 20-year prison terms and $100,000 fines.
And with COVID and the crowded conditions in prison, we're basically talking death sentence in many ways. If the next variant is as bad as we think,
right? And if these people are found guilty and sent to prison for 20 years, that means the U.S. now is one of those countries that jails political dissidents. It takes us that step further away from being a democracy.
Yeah.
So we can't afford to send these nice people, and and overwhelmingly they're really nice, peaceful people. They're all those protests and all that. There was a lot of brutality on the side of the police. There was zero brutality on the side of the protesters. They never fought back, quote unquote, because they were there to make a political point and to help save the planet. They weren't there to fight with the police or be violent, and so they do not deserve to go to prison for 20 years for that.
I really personally feel like we need to work towards creating a world and imagining a world in which not even bad people have to be in a place like prison where they essentially throw you away.
Well, that's, there's lots of places in the world that follow that model, and it's working. They actually have less crime.
And you say, well, sociopaths, but okay, just for argument, part of this is, they say one thing I've heard is that in Native American culture, children are raised so gently that sociopaths, people with that predisposition, are never triggered, for example.
Okay.
So it's not just, let's let everybody out of the prisons. It's also, let's address or head off behavioral issues in other ways.
All right, here. And
But really not perfectly nice people who are just standing in front of a bulldozer.
Exactly. And so it's, it is really kind of critical that these people not go to jail for the rest of their lives. Because, if you send an octogenarian to jail for 20 years, likely they won't be getting out. So
the plus side is they won't have to serve much time.
Well, I guess that's a plus.
It'll be kind of a bummer, though.
All right, so on to some good news. So balancing that out, we're very balanced here on For a Green Future. Some really great news out of Australia this past week. First, there was a report that the South Australia grid, which is the first really large regional electric grid, hit zero demand because all the power was being offset by wind and solar.
Yay, Australia.
Yeah, that was like Wednesday. Then a couple days later, I believe, well, it might have been the next day, it might have been Thursday, big story. This is in the Renew Economy newsletter. Wind and solar grabbed world record 135% share of state demand and 108% over 2 days. And so, in other words, the wind and solar power in the South Australia grid was surged to so much power that they produced more than South Australia needed. They actually were able to export power out to the surrounding regions. And, that is great. And one of the reasons they were able to do this is that they have a technological innovation, which we have. And, here the argument has always been, we need the nukes, we need the coal, we need the gas because we've got to provide base load power. And the base load power is this myth. We don't need base load power. The European grid's proving that every day. But one thing that does happen is that with those big generators is they sort of set the synchronicity of the grid. We all have 60 cycle power, and it's very important that all the peaks and troughs of all the generators and all the users, everybody's lined up at that 60 cycles, and it's exactly right, because otherwise things start interfering, you start getting fires and stuff. So rather than keep a percentage of the gas going, and what South Australia has done is they have created these what they have is it's basically these just big heavy spinny things and
Is that a technical term, Joe?
Well, all right, let's see here. Well, they've got they're trying to put in grid forming inverters. I'm looking for the technical term here.
Grid forming inverters. Yeah, those are nice, but doesn't have a ring to it. I'm not catchy.
No. let's see here. I'm trying to find I can't find the technical
We'll call
term.
them GFEs. GFEs?
Big, grid. Yeah, grid forming inverters. Yeah, those are good. GFEs. But what these big spinny things are. Oh, there we go. They're synchronous condensers. That's the name.
Synchronous condensers.
Synchronous condensers. And literally, they're just these big, heavy weights that they spin at 60 cycles per second. And they keep the whole grid in line. Everybody can check against it and say, am I supposed to peak now, or am I supposed to peak a 6/30th of a second from now? Oh, okay. And they spin synchronously, and they keep the grid balanced without having to have a nuke plant or a coal plant or a gas plant. And so,
cool.
Once you get enough of these synchronous condensers in your grid, you can get rid of base load power completely. So, and just go off the power you've got whenever you have it. So kudos to South Australia and the South Australian grid. And the funny thing about Australia,
good on ya.
Yeah, good on ya. Good on ya, mate.
We think that's funny because we're from America.
Australia, Australia, we love you.
There we go.
So, so that's really good news, and it sets the model. It sets the pattern that the rest of us can follow, because a synchronous condenser is just a tiny fraction of the cost of a natural gas plant or a nuke plant or a coal plant. So it's again, not only is it cleaner, it's also cheaper. So that means lower electric bills for us. The more grids go to that, and the more grids go away from those huge capital intensive, big expensive things, the less we have to pay for electricity. So all right, so now on to some potentially bad news, which is kind of surrounded by good news. Well, the Pilgrim nuclear plant, has closed, which is nice.
Good.
It's in Massachusetts. That's why it's called Pilgrim Nuke Plant. And they're in the process of decommissioning it. Unfortunately, the company, Holtec, which Diane Dorigo's talked about Holtec before, our friend from Nuclear Information Resource Service, they have this reputation for doing the decommissioning sort of fast and dirty and kind of cutting corners.
That's not what you want. Homer Simpson in charge of your decommissioning.
No, you do not. And so they're in the process of taking the used fuel rods out of the pools where they're stored and putting them into dry casks, which is a good thing. It's a better thing to have them in the dry casks than in the pools, because if the pools were to lose their pumps and the water was to go down, then all those spent fuel rods would melt down in a huge cataclysm.
Oh, geez.
So, yes.
Huge cataclysm. Never good.
No, yeah, even bigger than a nuke plant melting down, because a spent fuel pool has literally 50 years of rods in it. So, anyway, so that's good that they're doing that. But the problem is, what's left over in the pool after you've taken all the rods out is this water, which has been circulating around spent fuel rods for 20, 30 years, and is incredibly radioactive and is contaminated with all kinds of radioactive elements. There's over 200 radioactive elements, and they're all there in that water. Holtec wants to just dump them into Boston Harbor.
No.
No, yeah, that's my first reaction. No.
No,
because Boston Harbor, actually, I want to mention this to people around here who might not know. Boston Harbor is one of the best examples in the world of recovering natural ecosystems in a really polluted area. I mean, Boston Harbor used to be practically biologically dead. There was so much pollution going into it. Over decades, they've built Boston Harbor's ecology back up step by step, species by species. They've put in more wetlands. They've gotten really strict on runoff regulations and stuff. And right now, you can go to Boston, like I did last December, and you can get lobsters that were caught there in the bay, 5 miles from you. And they're like the best lobster in the world. I mean, I had a lobster bisque that still causes me, to have flashbacks of just pleasure, because there was this little hole in the wall restaurant, and it's literally right next to the harbor, and all the locals were pulling in there, and we were like, that's probably where we should go. And we got this lobster bisque that was just unimaginably delicious. And a part of the reason is that it was from a lobster, a live, healthy lobster that was caught just a few feet away, basically.
Very nice.
And so it's an example of an ecosystem, how we can get back to a green future, but not if we dump tons and tons of highly radioactive water into the bay, because those elements will get caught up in the food chain, and that wonderful lobster will be contaminated with radioactive substances, and it's just insane. But what Holtec is hoping, they're asking the NRC to do it. And the thing is, the NRC supposedly has authority over radioactive stuff, but the EPA is saying, wait a minute, you got to ask us too. And so, but Holtec is trying to push the idea through that, no, we just need to ask our buddies in the NRC. And if they say it's okay, we're just going to do it. Even though the EPA is saying, wait, we've got authority here. And there's also a state commission that they need to ask permission from, should need to ask permission from. But Holtec is gambling that they can just get the NRC to give them permission, and then they're just going to do it, and then maybe apologize later. Because, supposedly the NRC has authority over radioactive stuff.
Oopsie, so sorry.
So, big controversy building up there.
I've been to Boston one time. We went, when I was a kid, we went to the Boston Market, the actual Boston Market, not the restaurant.
Right. Yeah, that's a nice place. We went through there too, yeah. So, all right. Well, that's all I had queued up for today's show, and we still have a couple minutes left. Still time for a call at 877-909-1007, or a text at 419-973-5841. So, Rebecca, how was your Thanksgiving?
Not too bad. We went over to a friend's house and had brisket.
Brisket, yes, the traditional Thanksgiving brisket. We actually made a pizza. We had a Thanksgiving pizza. So.
I think one of my best Thanksgiving memories is the time that my mom, I think a couple of years running, made quiche for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner.
Oh, quiche. Yeah, okay.
It was quite a bit tastier than the turkey, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you get turkey wrong, it could be kind of a chore to eat that.
Even when it's good, it's just kind of like, it's turkey,
Yeah, true. And
I like cheese a lot. People tell you I like cheese a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. People keep using this expression "too much cheese," which is just completely incomprehensible to me.
not quite grasping the concept.
No.
Yeah. I did have on the Sunday before Thanksgiving. I had a dinner with a bunch of friends and neighbors. That was very pleasant.
Nice.
A lot of people are getting back together and doing that. But my family, who from Western New York, they normally rent like the church hall, so that like 20 to 30 of them can get together, and like everybody brings a dish. That's what they normally do for Thanksgiving. Unfortunately, two of my nieces...
Yeah, that's what the Woods did for many years also up in Six Lakes. We rented the VFW.
Oh, yeah.
It was great because you could tell, like, the kids would just form a giant pack and run around in a circle around the aisle of the hall, like, for several hours. Probably kids were swapping in and out, I don't know, during that time, but it was always the same number. And then, like, you could tell that the only children are the ones with only two kids in the family, because when they fell down, they'd lie there and howl till a grown-up came and comforted them. Whereas when you get above 3 or more kids, they just sit there looking dazed until the pack comes around again and then get up and start running.
Right. Yeah, no Thanksgiving feast is complete without some kids running around. That's as essential as any of the other elements. All
Yelling,
right.
they should yell at the same time.
Yeah.
It's tradition. I don't know.
So, all right. Well, that's it for this show, I think. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And again, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com. All right, this is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
Bye.
I don't want them nukes run by them